recent election of a new pope has brought the Vatican back into world focus, and it got me thinking about World War II and the Pope back then. I visited Vatican City in 2023 and was very lucky to have an audience with Pope Francis, and do check out my video on that strange day, link in the end screen. For over 80 years, rumours have swirled that Himmler's SS planned a dastardly operation to kidnap the Pope and take over Vatican City. Historians remain divided on the topic, but it is a fascinating story nonetheless that demonstrates that the Pope is a political figure as well as a spiritual leader, as true in 2025 as during World War II. The Pope during World War II was an Italian named Pius XII. He was, and still is, a controversial character. Vatican City in Rome is not part of Italy. Rather, it is in fact the world's smallest country, measuring just 121 acres. It had become independent from Italy in 1929 under the Lateran treaties, but had for centuries been the capital of Roman Catholicism, and once the capital of a much larger country called the Papal States. The Pope was, and still is, an elected monarch, both the spiritual leader of Roman Catholicism, but also a temporal leader of a country, and Vatican City maintains its own foreign relations and embassies around the world. It also has its own police force and army. Today, the only military force left is the Pontifical Swiss Guard, but during World War II the Vatican actually maintained much larger armed forces, whose job it was to protect the Pope and the borders of the tiny state. As well as the Swiss Guard, there was the Palatine Guard and the Noble Guard. Vatican City was neutral during World War II, but of course found itself deep in Axis territory, and often treading very carefully in trying to keep its neutrality. Pope Pius XII had, in 1939, attempted to mediate between the major European powers on the brink of World War II, without success. Pius XII was careful, once war broke out, not to explicitly condemn the German invasion of Poland, despite Poland being a Catholic country. But he was clear in his disapproval of war, racism, anti-Semitism, and persecutions of the Church. He was also careful to remain on good terms with Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, who likewise was careful not to do anything to upset Italian Catholics. In 1940, the Pope had an audience with Nazi Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop, and Pius XII told him that he disapproved of the Germans' atrocities in Poland and the persecution of the Jews and Christians in both Germany and Poland. Of course, Mussolini entered the war on Hitler's side in 1940, but militarily the involvement was a disaster for the Italian armed forces, who were ill prepared for a modern war. They suffered huge defeats in East and North Africa at the hands of the British Empire, and led to the Italians being relegated as the limping partner in the Axis alliance. The commitment of Italian forces on the Eastern Front against the Soviets was likewise a disaster. In 1942, Pius XII delivered a Christmas message over Radio Vatican, during which he publicly voiced concern for the victims of Nazi genocide, which did little to endear him or the Vatican to Hitler. It has also emerged that the Pope was involved with the anti-Hitler resistance. The German opposition hoped to use the Pope as an intermediary with the British. Pius certainly permitted information to be passed between the two parties via Vatican officials. In late 1942, senior Italian officials secretly approached the Vatican to send out peace initiatives to the Western Allies. Many in the Italian military and around Mussolini wanted the war ended, or at least Italy should remove itself from the Axis with Hitler. Following the Allied invasion of Sicily in July 1943, those opposed to Mussolini moved against him, and the Duce was summoned before King Victor Emmanuel III and summarily dismissed as Prime Minister and placed into custody. The new Italian regime, led by Marshal Pietro Badoglio, entered into secret negotiations with the Allies to change sides. Following the Allied landings in mainland Italy in early September 1943, Hitler ordered Unternehmen Achsa, Operation Oak, the German military takeover of Italy. Rome was occupied by a large German force. The Vatican was now under direct threat. Vatican officials had been secretly giving sanctuary to escaped Allied prisoners of war and some Jews, and the German security police, the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, had been playing a cat-and-mouse game of trying to catch the Vatican aiding the Allies. Vatican neutrality was directly threatened. The idea of actually occupying Vatican territory and seizing the Pope appears to have originated with lapsed Catholic Adolf Hitler. According to very excellent sources, none other than the higher SS and police leader of Italy, SS Obergruppenführer Karl Wolff, was the man charged with carrying out the operation. Hitler issued such an order to him on the 13th of September 1943. The Führer wanted Vatican City occupied, its vast records and art treasures seized, and the Pope and his cabinet and staff seized and taken to Germany as prisoners. The SS were to take the Pope and the cardinals to Liechtenstein Castle in Württemberg, Germany. Wolff had once been Hitler's senior SS liaison man at Führer headquarters until sent to Italy. He would be intimately involved in negotiations that led to the surrender of German forces in northern Italy in April 1945, and he lived until 1984. However, regarding the plot to seize the Pope, another source was Generalmajor Erwin von Lahausen, a very high-ranking member of the Abwehr, German military intelligence, who stated at the Nuremberg trials in 1946 that the SS had conceived of a plot to punish the Italian people for toppling Mussolini by kidnapping and even murdering the Pope. This plot predates Hitler's alleged directive to General Wolff on this subject, as the head of the Abwehr and Lahausen's boss, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, broke the news of the SS plot to his Italian counterpart, General Cesare Amé, in Venice on the 29th to 30th of July 1943. A further corroborating witness at this meeting was Oberst Feso Freytag von Loringhofen, who was a friend of Count von Stauffenberg, the man who in July 1944 would place a bomb in the Führer's Eastern Front headquarters at Rustenburg. Lahausen stated that the SS dropped the plot once they found out that the Italians knew of the scheme. Another person in the know, and who spoke of this plot post-war, was Rudolf Rahn, the German plenipotentiary to the Italian Social Republic, the fascist puppet state created for a rescued Mussolini by Hitler in German-occupied northern Italy. Rahn, a diplomat, wrote a letter to a journalist in the 1970s outlining the plot, but stated that all documents relating to it had been destroyed before war's end. Another version of the plot had General Wolff convincing Hitler to dump the idea, as it would have been an own goal for the Nazi regime, angering Catholics everywhere, including at home, particularly in Italy and many other countries which were occupied by the Germans, and might have led to real trouble for German occupation forces busy fighting the advancing Allies. Other historians contend that the Kidnap plot was in fact an invention of the British Political Warfare Executive. The British ambassador to the Vatican, Sir Darcy Osborne, pointed out that having the neutral Vatican City in the middle of Rome prevented the Allies from effectively bombing the German communications center for the German army in Italy, which was located next door. Many historians have pointed out that deposing the Pope would have been a senseless and self-defeating act on the part of the Nazis. Personally, I do think that following Mussolini's fall from power, Hitler was very angry, may have given orders that Vatican City be occupied and the Pope kidnapped. Heinrich Himmler, the ever-faithful loyalist, probably ordered some form of plan or feasibility study carried out by the Reich Main Security Office, the RSHA, in Berlin. A directive of some sort was then issued to Wolff as the senior SS figure in Italy, who realized that it was completely nuts and counseled against it. The Abwehr, deeply involved in the German resistance to Hitler, also got wind of the plan through their own contacts and deliberately leaked it to the Italian authorities, which further undermined the plot's usefulness, and it was quietly dropped. At some point, all the planning documents were destroyed, leaving only high-level witnesses who talked post-war. The truth may never be known, but I think that the Pope had a very lucky escape in this case. Pius XII continued as Holy Father until his death on the 9th of October 1958. His papacy coloured strongly by World War II and his actions and pronouncements during that conflict. Ironically, Pius was accused of being too soft on Nazi genocide by the Allies, and accused of being an Allied sympathizer by the Nazis. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.